What movie was so hyped up but ended up being terrible? Ender's Game was the same. I read the books in late 90s early 2000s and even the newer books that landed in the late 2000s. The way they took a lot of things out of sequence and removed vital relationships in the book was criminal. Ender's relationship with Valentine was his closest and strongest relationship that he had. It was essentially non-existent in the movie. He almost figured out that they were commanding real ships several battles before the final one. He kept that secret close to his chest and didn't tell his battle mates to protect them, which increased his stress and only broke the news after the final battle. You know you were in for a bad time when the literal first scene of the film depicts Artemis reasonably tan rocking it on a surfboard. Artemis by the beginning of the first book was a paled, non-athletic, preteen crime lord who hated the very concept of fun. His lack of any kind of physical strength was a plot point at one point in the franchise if I recall. Yes, Hooper permanently proved that he knows nothing about musicals with that one. Cats has a ton of really good songs, but they were all messed up because Hooper didn't even bother using click tracks to keep the tempo, as well as changing all the songs from being sung by another cat or group of cats and having them being sung by the cat the song is about. He almost messed up the whole plot, including making McCavity the main antagonist when McCavity is a nuisance at best in the stage version. The true protagonist is Grisabella, who just wants to be accepted back into the group while the older members of the group still hold a major grudge against her. Lindsay Ellis does a good job explaining how badly the plot, as little as there is in the original, and spirit of the musical was destroyed, and Sideways covered how the music of the show was absolutely butchered. My grandparents love musicals. My grandfather's two favorite musicals are Cats and Les Mis. He enjoyed Les Mis but prefers the stage adaptation. I warned my grandma that Cats was supposed to be bad. They went anyways. He called me in a towering rage after seeing it. They walked out at dancing cockroaches and got their money back. He was torn between devastated and angry over how bad it was. Wonder Woman 1984. It had all the ingredients of being written by Hollywood executives and focus groups. 80s nostalgia that had nothing to do with the plot. A new golden suit for Wonder Woman that had nothing to do with the plot. Chris Pine returned from the dead and had nothing to do with the plot. Kristen Wiig played an unnecessary villain that had nothing to do with the plot. The Dreamstone came from nowhere. Maxwell is talked out of destroying the world. Maxwell finds his son by yelling his name in a random part of the city. Wonder Woman learns how to make an airplane invisible by just thinking really hard. That movie was unbelievable. It's like they didn't bother watching it themselves. 45 minutes and there wasn't a sign of plot. Meanwhile we're watching them attempt a quirky rom-com that no one signed up for, culminating in a scene that went on and on and on where they steal a plane for no reason other than superhero exceptionalism. Also, having Chris Pine's ghost take over a random dude's body served no purpose other than making everything Diana does literal rape. Why? I bought the Blu-ray disc on sale for $8. It's not even worth that. Should have waited until it was on the $3 bin. It's like there was no continuity. The big thing about the first one was that she was training in secret, and the very first scene has her competing against adult warriors and not only holding her own but actually kicking ass. All of my friends got sold on that movie based on the soundtrack alone. Yeah, some of the songs were good, but it was so soulless, like they knew the movie was going to be shitty, so they tried to tack on as many songs as they could to masquerade its shittiness. And by soundtrack, I don't mean the songs produced for the movie, I mean classic songs, like House of the Rising Sun, You Don't Own Me, Sympathy for the Devil, Fortunate Son, etc. It was like they were trying to pull a Guardians of the Galaxy with a notable soundtrack, but it didn't work because they used some of the most generic songs possible to create the mood they were going for, rather than accentuating it. It was so miscast it was criminal. Take a look at the characters in the comics and you could think of at least a dozen great choices that would have been better. I remember someone online pointing out that the movie Passengers, with Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence, released around the same time, should have switched its leads with the ones from Valerian, would have significantly improved both films. I thought it was done really well up until they actually landed in Tomorrowland. The depiction of it being this vacant wasteland except for Evil Guy and a few henchmen just didn't really make any sense. I think they lost the sense of scale that was needed. Overall, I'd give it a solid B though. Acting and effects were good and the plot never got boring. I like it quite a bit, especially that Felix "That's Why I Eat the Peppers" lighter. I also really like Strawberry and the opera bit. The basic villain plan was also an interesting idea. I'd agree that it had a real awful ending, or I would have until Spectre raised all other James Bond final acts by being such a dreadful low mark. It wasn't Casino, but I think it's very watchable. Mulan is some of the worst movies I've ever watched. It honestly made me question the whole industry. How could Disney, the corp with infinite amount of money and probably the best resources in the whole world, produce a such shit-ass movie? And they didn't even need to write an original script. How do you fuck up this bad? I never understood what happened there. Did whoever adapted that story just decide no, I think this would be better? I get some things can get lost in translation, but this turned it to a movie loosely based on Aragon. I keep hoping there will be a well-made series one day. I love the story. It deserves to be redeemed cinematically. At the time it came out, my friend and I were in high school with bootleg copies of 3D Studio Max 3 trying to create neat photorealistic renderings. So when the trailers for that movie dropped, we were floored. The CGI was pretty groundbreaking at the time. The movie was shit, but we were still in awe of the CGI. This is a bit one. Having been a huge FF fan for forever, the thought of having a movie based on the games was a dream come true. Then to see it was next-level graphics instead of live action and in theaters, my hype level was at max. The movie ended up being a huge letdown. Looking back on it today, I should have realized that it would have been near impossible to fit what they do for stories in games in a 2-hour movie, but I still don't understand who the hell banked their entire movie future on that script of all things. They needed to go with something more in line with what their fan base was used to. That being said, I did get some enjoyment out of seeing the realistic graphics at least, but still a letdown. It definitely had the big hype, and for almost everyone it was a letdown, but was it really terrible? The movie was exciting, silly, and had some dumb moments. Harrison Ford reminds everyone he's still a leading man and Indy is his character. Overall it's not as good as Last Crusade or Raiders, but I'd rate it better than Temple of Doom. The problem was that they overpower Batman and underpower Superman in order to make it work. If it had been Superman versus the entire Bat family, that would have made it more believably even. Also, given how much they crammed in there, it should have been a multi-parter. Instead it's just a series of scenes, some that are good, some not. It would have been great if it was just a solid shoot-'em-up heist movie with zombies. All that double-crossing, zombie baby daddy bullshit, and Drax's daughter whose plot served zero purpose besides spoilers making sure that no one made it out alive because she's stupid, kinda ruined the whole thing. And while I'm sure Tig would have been great had she been cast originally, she did the best she could considering the circumstances. It's super obvious she's green screened and not actually interacting with any of the cast. The 2010 Alice in Wonderland movie, not terrible, but considering how Tim Burton disliked the 1951 movie, which prior to watching I still disagreed, but respected, I thought he'd be the right person to fully bring Lewis Carroll's vision to front. But nope, he just slapped Alice in a generic hero's journey, changed Wonderland to Underland, despite the former still worded in the title, and indirectly talked down to anyone who questioned that aspect, and that's just part of it. The movie was just pretentious mediocrity. Mulan was such a disappointment. The animated version is such a classic with great themes and lessons. The live action absolutely shat on those themes. The original movie sent a message of girls are powerful and can do anything men can. The new movie turned it into you gotta be born with literal magical abilities to compete with anyone else. Also no Mushu, so fuck that. The new one was weird. It wasn't remake, but wasn't really a reboot either. The story was substantially different, and they went for a PG-13 rating for what was basically a kids' movie. I know Disney had some success with Beauty and the Beast and other live-action remakes, but Mulan 2020 honestly felt like it would have done better with a different name. Raya shows they know how to make a Disney movie for the Chinese market. Raya and the Last Dragon isn't by any stretch a great movie though, and it suffers a lot from betrayal of theme. The core theme running through the story is trusting people, and the central conflict between the two protagonists is about whether or not to trust others. Raya doesn't trust other people after what happened at the start, while Sisu inherently trusts others. But the film fails to stick the landing on this. The core narrative of the movie is that Raya doesn't trust people, but learns from Sisu that it's okay to trust others. Yet even as early as after they obtain the first of the 5 MacGuffins, Raya is seen blindly trusting people when she should have no reason to trust them, and sometimes it pays off for her, while sometimes it harms her efforts. Meanwhile Sisu's blind trust sometimes punishes her and sometimes it's rewarded. The film is completely inconsistent on whether it's right to trust in others, even though that's what the climax of the movie rests upon. Southland Tales, Richard Kelly's much-anticipated follow-up to the, at the time, recently crowned king of cult films Donnie Darko. The film was hyped for a couple of years pre-release. It was taking a huge chance on this, just beginning to establish himself. Former wrestler turned action star, The Rock, who took the film so seriously, he changed his name credit to his legal name Dwayne Johnson, for the first time ever. Had a series of graphic novels made that were required reading to have even the slightest idea about what was going on plot-wise. All kinds of new, at the time, online viral marketing tactics. One of the biggest, feature-heavy, websites ever created for a film, a 2.5 hour, and it was going to be much longer, epic, runtime, and a rare film score by Moby, who was huge at the time. With this film, Richard Kelly was supposed to assume the title of art house film king, replacing David Lynch. He did not do that. https://f.b/9a82sync7jk. Gangster Squad, star-studded cast with Gosling and Stone coming off their fantastic chemistry and performances in Crazy, Stupid, Love. Josh Brolin entering into the leading man stage of his career. Sean Penn playing an infamous gangster. Amazingly talented supporting cast. The director of Zombieland. Action-packed trailer with the sick Jay-Z song. And the movie was just god-fucking awful. This might be controversial, but this kinda happens with all the classics. Like, I'd heard my entire life that Star Wars is an amazing franchise, but I just never happened to catch them. They always aired late on a school night, or on a weekend I happened to not be at home. I never watched them. Cue me being 17, I think, and I found A New Hope at my local library. I rented it, watched it, and it was pretty meh. Would I watch the entire franchise if I could? I mean, yeah, but like I have better shit to do with my time. Did I hate it? Not really. It was fine-ish. Indiana Jones, meanwhile, bored me so much the first time I watched it that I just stopped and watched something else. These movies exist at such levels of hype they cannot possibly hope to match their own shadow, and they are so ingrained in our media gestalt that their plots feel stale once they refresh. I've only seen bits and pieces of that movie, but the one scene that always drove me up the wall is where he recites all of his soldiers' social security numbers. I've been an NCO in the U.S. Army for well over 10 years and I have not only never memorized any of my soldiers' SSNs, I don't even think I've seen more than 1 or 2 of them. It would be insanely creepy if I had their SSNs memorized. That's a massive peer breach. I don't even know their DOD ID numbers, and there's absolutely no reason why I should. I don't mind movies being campy, but this one couldn't make up its mind what it wanted to be. The action was good in certain bits, but the story just absolutely killed it for me. I really hate when you can see something coming a mile away. Spoilers. As soon as dumb girl wants to go with them and Bautista says that she's not to leave his sight, I don't think a damn person couldn't guess what would happen. At least try to mix things up just a little. Plus, the security guy just tagging along. I wonder what he's going for. He won't betray the group in any way, will he? Good thing that camp guard got what he deserved. There's no way we'll see him again. If he just went for straight-up action and ditched the metric ton of side stories, it would have been great. I don't need a complicated story if you give me some great action, but don't fuck it with extra shit that doesn't need to be there. Then he tries mixing things up by ending it in an utterly ridiculous way. Deus Ex Machina bite, just because no one saw it coming. And why would they, since he never actually bites him in the movie that you can see? It doesn't mean it's a good twist. Knight Snyder pulling a Barry Allen and fucking the timeline. Look at some classic action movies like Commando, Die Hard, Rambo, Mad Max, etc. Just to throw some out there. You can pick apart the plot, but you don't feel the need to because you got some good action sequences. There wasn't enough action to excuse that elevator fart of a story. Arrogant. I still remember people saying it's the next best thing right after L'Autre. I didn't watch it in the theater when it just came out, but my hyped friends got so disappointed. I never asked why, because of the negative atmosphere going around from the obs who watched it. A few years later I had the opportunity to watch it on TV. Holy shit, I never felt such cringe in my entire life. It sucks because Martin Freeman was a perfect Bilbo Baggins. He had the right amount of humor, confusion, and emotion. Exactly how I imagined him in the book. Absolutely no reason to have 3 movies for a single book. It could have been pulled off with a single 3 hours 30 minutes movie. Meanwhile, L'Autre is one of the most fantastic movie trilogies known to man. I don't know how Peter Jackson fumbled it after making 3 masterpieces in a row. Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Fans forget how happy they were with TFA at the time and how much they defended it as an homage to A New Hope when everyone else was like JJ basically remade A New Hope. Now everyone was excited for the second one, wanting to know who Rey's parents were, trying to guess if she's related to Obi-Wan or Luke, trying to guess who Snoke was. Everyone was like he's Darth Plagueis and excited for how much ass Luke was going to kick. And then it came out and it was dog shit. I still remember when Leia gets blown up and is floating dead in space and then starts to Superman back to the ship. I laughed so loud and got shushed by angry fans behind me because it was supposed to be cool or something. Same for me, but The Rise of Skywalker. Was excited to see where they'd bring the results of The Last Jedi. The Trevorrow script with alternates of previous Force powers we've seen, like Luke using Force Ghost to haunt Kylo rather than reform him. Instead we got 2 movies crammed into one and the remake of Rogen Endgame. Falcon, on your left, I Am Iron Man, all the Jedi. Other than the fact none of the directors talked to each other. It was clear JJ wanted to remake The Yacht for a new audience and Ryan's changes were too drastic because he was doing 2 movies in one too. Some people wanted the JJ remake, reboot, and that's fine, but I wanted to see a different direction. It was so clear Disney was just doing the movies to appease the feedback, both TLJ and Roz, and it is just so disappointing. Dragon Ball Evolution. I was so hyped for a live-action version of one of my all-time favorites, but having watched it, I sincerely wish I could hit the undo button on that one. It had only the thinnest of veneers of similarity to the cartoon, like character names, but other than that it was completely dissimilar. No super speed kung fu, no energy blasts, no flying/fighting in the sky, no destroying entire landscapes. And what the heck was up with Bashi? I could gripe more, but I figure my point is made. Honestly, I think the Fear Street movies on Netflix were rather more hyped up than they should have been. I don't think they're terrible per se, but I've heard that the entire trilogy is going to be released, kinda back to back. I've never seen the trailers for them, but apparently they're supposed to be this big event or something. I honestly think that the movies should have been released around Halloween season, and while I haven't read the Fear Street books written by R.L. Stine, I have read the Goosebumps series obsessively in middle school, and even I, someone who hasn't read Fear Street before, can tell that the movies are kinda missing something. But, overall, I think the Netflix Fear Street films are nice to binge watch on a weekend if you feel like watching some cheesy, slasher-esque films. While they're kinda cheesy, I am interested in the story and where it's headed, because, spoiler warning if you haven't seen the Fear Street movies, the main antagonist, a witch who has cursed the town the films take place in by influencing, possessing people and turning them into her murderous slaves, can pretty much summon the souls of her victims and make them go after the protagonists. At the end of the second film, the main protagonist seems to have traveled in time to the year 1666 in the witch's body, the butterfly effect style, and the next film looks like it's going to explore the events which led up to the witch's execution, and just how the town's curse befell on everyone. The third and final film of the trilogy is going to be released on July 16th, 3 days from now, and I plan on watching it to see how it'll all end. In my personal opinion, the films aren't terrible, but they were definitely overhyped. Interesting story, just not exactly scary in the sense you'll jump out of your skin.